Okay, so let's dive into one of the most fundamental processes on our planet. You know, it's that continuous cycle that supports all life, shapes our climate, and literally carves out the face of the Earth. But what if I told you that this process, the one we all learned about back in school, is hiding some truly incredible secrets?
So let's kick things off with a question that, when you really think about it, sounds like a total paradox. I mean, from space, our planet is this gorgeous blue marble, right? 3/4 of its surface is covered in water. So what's the deal? Why are we constantly hearing these calls to conserve water, to save every single drop?
Well, here's the first part of the answer, and it is a shocker. The reality is that almost all the water on Earth, a staggering 97.5% of it, is salty. That leaves just this tiny little sliver, 2.5%, as freshwater. You know, the stuff that all life on land actually needs to survive. So yeah, there's a huge expanse of water, but what we can actually use is incredibly rare from the get-go.
But wait, the story gets even more dramatic when we zoom in on that tiny 2.5% of fresh water. Get this, of that small amount, almost 70% is completely locked away, frozen in ice caps and glaciers. Another 30% is hidden deep underground as groundwater. So what's left? What we actually see every day, the rivers and the lakes, that makes up only about 0.3% of all fresh water. It makes you realize how fragile this whole balance really is. Okay, so we've got this paradox of a water-rich planet with very little usable water. So what makes this gigantic complex system actually work day in and day out? Well, it turns out it's all powered by two colossal natural forces working together like a perfectly tuned engine.
This engine basically has two main parts. First up, you've got the sun. It's the motor. Its energy heats the water, turning it into vapor and lifting it high up into the atmosphere. The second part is gravity. It acts as the regulator. Gravity is the force that pulls all that water back down to Earth as rain or snow, and it's what guides it on its journey back to the oceans. It's just genius in its simplicity, isn't it?
The great Leonardo da Vinci put it perfectly. Water is the juice of life. And it's so true. When you think about it, this whole endless cycle is like the planet's circulatory system. It's this massive network that delivers that juice of life to every single corner of the globe, even the most remote ones. So let's do a quick refresher on the basic mechanics, the classic 4 stages we all remember. First, evaporation. The sun heats water, it becomes vapor, and it rises. Second, condensation. Way up in the cool atmosphere, that vapor clumps together to form clouds. Third, precipitation. When the water droplets in those clouds get too heavy, they fall back to Earth. And fourth, collection. The water gathers in streams, rivers, lakes, and oceans, all ready to start the journey over again. But of course, the real world is always a bit more complicated than the textbook version. Scientists actually identify at least 2 key cycles, and honestly, understanding the difference between them is absolutely crucial. So you've got the small or oceanic cycle. This one's pretty simple. Water evaporates from the ocean surface and then, boom, falls right back into it as rain, usually not too far away. But it's the second one, the large global cycle, that's the real game changer for us. This is the cycle that transports all that precious water vapor from the oceans over the continents. Without it, our land would be nothing but a scorched, lifeless desert. But there's another incredibly important player in this big global cycle that we almost always forget about, and its contribution is huge. It can be summed up by this number, 10%. Any idea what this could be? This number shows the hidden power of the entire plant world. An estimated 10% of all the moisture in our atmosphere comes from something called transpiration. That's basically plants breathing. They suck up water through their roots and then release it as vapor through their leaves. And we're not talking small amounts here. The volumes are absolutely colossal. This really means that forests aren't just the lungs of the planet, like we always say. They are also giant water pumps, actively moving incredible amounts of water from the ground up into the sky, helping to spread it all around the world.
Now, when we talk about water collection, we usually picture rivers and lakes, right? But there's a huge hidden part of this whole process, groundwater. Have you ever wondered why rivers don't just dry up the day after a rainstorm? This is why. It's these invisible underground rivers slowly, steadily feeding our visible rivers and streams. You can think of it like a natural stabilization fund that keeps everything flowing, even during a drought.
Of course, you can't talk about a global process like this without asking the big question, where do we fit in? How do our modern activities affect this incredible mechanism that nature has been fine-tuning for billions of years?
Well, it turns out our impact is pretty significant, and it comes from a lot of different directions. When we cut down forests, we drastically reduce that vital transpiration we just talked about. We pollute rivers and lakes, poisoning the water right at the source. We take way too much for farming and industry, draining both the rivers and those underground reserves. And our cities, covering everything in asphalt and concrete, that just act like a giant shield, preventing rain from soaking back into the ground to replenish those crucial stores.
However, to be fair, it's important to get some perspective here. Some experts, like the geographer Pavel Krasenvit, point out that while our local impact is definitely serious, its scale is just tiny compared to the gigantic volumes of water evaporated from the world ocean alone. It's a humbling reminder that nature operates on a scale that is truly hard to comprehend.
And now, to wrap up this whole journey, let's look at the water cycle from an even bigger, almost cosmic perspective. This is where things get really wild.
We're all used to thinking that the water on Earth is just the same water, endlessly cycling around and around. But what if that's not the whole story? There's this concept called juvenile water. This is, for all intents and purposes, brand new water. It's born deep, deep inside the planet, in the magma, from oxygen and hydrogen atoms fusing together. And this water is just now, for the very first time in Earth's history, entering our global water cycle.
So here's the mind-blowing takeaway. The water cycle isn't a sealed, closed system. It is a living, breathing process that is still being fed, still being replenished from the very depths of our world. Just let that sink in for a moment.
And that, of course, leaves us with one final massive question. If a process that seems so simple, so well known as the water cycle, can hold secrets this profound, what other incredible things are hiding all around us, just in plain sight, waiting to be discovered?